Hi there Babylonians, this is Benzo and welcome to my New World video on the top 20 things I wish I'd learned before playing the game. This is going to make your leveling experience a lot faster and hopefully just give you a generally more enjoyable experience in the game. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay guys, so number one is going to be always create a camp. You can create your own or you could just use someone else's that's already been created. Do this before entering any kind of questing area that's around or above your level where you think you stand a good chance of dying, because this is going to save you a very long run from a potentially very distant town if you die, as you'll respawn at the campsite which will be relatively near to your death site. Since I've started remembering to do this, it has saved me a lot of time whilst leveling. So number one tip is going to be just remember to always create your camp. Okay then, and on to number two. This is going to be to carry food on you at all times. Now when you consume food, it lasts 20 minutes and it slowly regenerates your health points over time. And without food, you're not going to recover any health points automatically. So questing is going to be very difficult otherwise, and you're going to waste a lot of time dying if you don't take food with you. I'd also recommend taking some health potions for emergencies, as this will give you an instant hit of health where you need it if you get into a sticky situation. So number two is going to be always carry food and potions as well. Okay, so number three is going to be to always pick up the town project quests in town before you go off on your questing sessions. You can do a lot of these quests alongside the main and side quests, and they're often about collecting resources or killing certain types of mobs. There's quite a few acquire type quests where you can just buy the items in the market for a cheap price and then hand the quest in straight away. This is going to definitely help you level a lot faster than doing it without them. These quests refresh every now and again, so if the quest is a bit difficult for whatever reason, like the item's hard to acquire or craft, just abandon the quest and a new one will take its place in time. But yeah, definitely recommend getting these town project quests to boost your leveling speed, guys. Number four on the list is going to be to do most of your questing in the areas that you have the best territory standing in. This is because you can have things like percentage increase to XP gains and gathering speed gains. And this is going to help you level up significantly faster than in an area where you don't have these gains. So yeah, it makes the most sense to level up in an area where you have the best territory standing. Okay, so at number five, we've got the fact that having PvP enabled is going to give you significant XP gains on pretty much everything. PvP faction missions are going to get you triple the currency and XP for doing them. You're also going to get massive XP gains for your weapons if you do manage to kill the enemies. I know this isn't going to be for everyone due to the fact that you could potentially be killed quite a lot whilst questing. But if you're happy dealing with this additional threat, this 10% XP boost is going to save you a lot of time potentially whilst leveling. Okay, and that brings us on to tip number six, which is that enemy damage text is actually meaningful. So when you're attacking enemies, you'll notice that the damage text comes up in different colours. Enemies are resistant and vulnerable to different types of damage, so piercing, slashing, magical, etc. And the colour of the text will actually advise you whether you're doing optimal damage. So white text is neutral or normal. Blue text means that the enemy is resistant to that type of damage, so you do not want to be doing that type of damage ideally. Yellow text is going to show you that the enemy is susceptible and weak to that type of damage, so keep that up if you do find out their vulnerabilities. And orange text will show you any critical hits that you're getting. An additional tip worth mentioning here is that you'll always get a critical hit if you're attacking the enemy from behind. Now tip number seven here, it's quite a basic one, but it's quite important to remember in combat to experiment with area of effect attacks. That is because it's very easy to become swarmed with enemies in this game. You'll suffer knockback, which means you won't be able to attack as each enemy attacks you. And when you've got 2 or 3 enemies attacking you at the same time, it's going to become paramount that you do area of effect attacks to kill them all at the same time as quickly as possible. So I can't mention the specific skills or attacks here because there's so many in the game, but just find out what your AoE attacks and skills are and focus on those when you're being swarmed by enemies, or else you are going to die a lot. Tip number 8 is that armor significantly affects your combat mobility. So you won't run any slower with heavier armor as opposed to lighter armor, but the dodging mechanic in game differs a lot based on your armor weight. So if you have heavy armor equipped, your dodge is going to be a fairly useless slow sidestep, and that's probably most suited to tanking builds. If your armor weight is normal, your dodge is going to be a bit more useful. It's a quick hop, and that's kind of balanced between speed and protection, and it's suited to DPS builds. If you have light armor equipped, you're going to have a dodge which is a quick roll. It's very useful, covers a lot of distance. You can easily get out of the way of ranged attacks and people chasing you down. It's probably most suited to characters who will not be up close, like healers and mages. So yeah, this is just to be aware that the armor weight that you choose is going to significantly affect your playstyle. And so we're on to tip number 9, guys, which is to fast travel light. Now, what do I mean by that, and why do I say that? So, moving around the map in New World can be very cumbersome. You can only run, as you will be aware, we don't have any mounts. So, fast travel is invaluable to get to places quickly, but it's going to take up a resource called Azoth every time you use fast travel. Now, the amount of Azoth currency goes up significantly based on your carrying weight. So, my advice here is to travel as light as possible wherever you can. So an additional tip here is to collect more Azoth. You can obtain tools that give you a chance to obtain it on per node collected, so mining, harvesting, etc. I think it's around 35% to gather 1 Azoth per node collected, which is a small amount, but this does add up over time. You're going to need as much of this resource as possible, so don't waste it by travelling heavy. And so we're on to tip number 10, which is the fact that home ownership allows recall, just as the inns allow recall once per hour. Home ownership will allow you to recall back to your home every so often based on the price of the house. So the cheapest house is going to allow you to recall once every 4 hours, and the most expensive house available is going to allow you to recall once every 2 hours. So of course, this is going to allow you to travel around the map a lot faster than you can otherwise. And something to bear in mind is that you can own multiple homes. So what you want to do when you can afford multiple homes is buy them in different towns so that you maximise your ability to travel across the map. Now that quickly leads us on to tip number 11, which is the fact that you receive a first time buyer's discount of 50% on your first home. So when you do save enough money for your first home, if you do want to go for that tier 2 or 3 home, just bear in mind that you're going to be saving a significant amount more on that 50% if you buy a higher tier home. You're saving 2,500 if you buy a tier 1 home, you're saving 5,000 if you buy a tier 2 home, and 7,500 if you can afford that tier 3 home. So it's up to you whether you want to wait or not. You know, it swings and roundabouts in terms of if you buy one earlier, buy a tier 1 house, you'll have that fast travel cooldown sooner. But you will save a significant amount of coin if you do wait for that higher tier house. And that brings us on to tip number 12, which is to always have the best tools available to you. So you'll want to be crafting or purchasing the tier 2 iron tools as soon as you reach level 5, as they have a 125% base gathering speed and will gather a lot faster than the tier 1 flint tools, which are 100% base gathering speed. Similarly, you'll also want to upgrade to the tier 3 steel tools as soon as you hit level 20, as they have a base gathering speed of 250%, which is double that even of the tier 2 iron tools. It's a really big jump in gathering speed and is going to save you a lot of time. An additional tip here is to keep an eye out for tools that have bonuses, such as a percentage increase to the amount gathered. And you'll be able to find these tools on the market for a fairly reasonable price early on, and it definitely helps when leveling up your gathering skills. And now we're on to tip number 13, which is that the gathering nodes in-game are static, which means that all of the spawn points for the monsters, all the mining nodes, you know, gathering herbs, etc., they're always the same. They do not differ based on the time of day, and they do not differ based on what server you're connected to. So if you come onto the website shown on screen, www.newworld-map.com, you'll be able to filter based on pretty much any item in game, They are user submissions, which means there's going to be, 1% inaccuracy. But I would say they're very accurate. Everything I've seen on this map has been there in-game. So let's face it, guys. What would you do without this map? You'd just be guessing where stuff was in-game. So use it. Plan your gathering routes in advance and make the most of your time in-game. Now, tip number 14, guys. I'm sure a few of you are going to laugh at me for this, but I know there's probably at least a couple of other people out there like me in that when you're playing an RPG, you can just play automatically, ignore pretty much all advice that's given to you, keep clicking next, and hitting things and gathering things. Now, when I was told that I could track items as I was unlocking, mining, and herb gathering, etc., yeah, I completely ignored the fact that you can track the resources on the compass at the top of the screen. So there will be a small icon which represents the items, such as you can see in the video at the moment, tracking hemp. It will point you in the exact direction of the item as long as you're in the vicinity of it in the first place. It helps a lot when trying to gather resources quickly, such as when someone else is on the scene and trying to gather them as well. So yeah, it's a handy thing. It's not obvious to everyone initially, even though it might be obvious to some of you. But yes, use the compass to track resources at the top of the screen. Now, tip number 15, we have salvage items early. Now, I can't overstate how important inventory management is in this game. You're going to find a lot of useless items early on in your questing. You'll look at them and you'll think, maybe I can sell them on the market. No one's going to buy them. Don't bother. You're just wasting your time. In fact, you are going to waste money posting items on the auction house because there's a small fee when you do post items. So salvage all these items early on. Open up your inventory space for the important items, such as things that are gathered like ore and herbs, etc. And yeah, if you hold S and click on an item, it's going to allow you to get a small amount of money and also repair parts that are going to come in useful, because you're going to need to repair stuff in your inventory like your armor and your weapons quite regularly. So don't waste time early game holding on to stuff that you're not going to need. Just salvage those items early on. And now we're on to tip number 16, which is to get a bag as soon as humanly possible. It's going to increase your encumbrance score, which means you can hold more stuff in your inventory without having to go back to town to offload it all. So you can craft one or you can buy one. The tier 3 bags are a bit expensive at the moment, but they're going to provide about 150 encumbrance increase. But again, quite expensive. But you can easily purchase a worn traveller satchel, which is plus 50 encumbrance. Or you might even be able to save up for a coarse leather adventurer satchel, which is plus 100 encumbrance for a fairly reasonable price. This is just going to make life so much easier. You're going to have to go back to base far less often. Buy a bag really early on or craft one. So tip number 17 is that inventory management is key. So similar to the last tip about having a bag expanding your inventory, keep your inventory as clear as you can, because you're going to need that for items in the world. Just bear in mind that when you're in town, you can craft items from your storage shed. You don't have to have the items in your inventory. You can also sell items on the market from your storage shed. So the things you're going to need to keep in your inventory are the weapons that you'll be using regularly. Don't keep weapons that you might use later. Just keep the weapons you're going to use, your food that you'll need when questing, and your health and mana potions, etc. So keep your inventory clean so that you have to visit town way less often. Now we're on to tip number 18, which is to establish a hub of operations early on in the game. Now, banking in New World comes in the form of a storage shed unit, as we've discussed, which is located in each settlement. Bulk moving items around in New World can be very difficult, so you'll want to base yourself somewhere permanently rather than split your resources all over the world. That just doesn't make any sense. A very important thing to note here is that any 2 settlements which are controlled by your faction that you're in will have their settlement storages linked, and you will be able to transfer items from these linked storages for a coin fee, rather than having to manually haul the items all around in your inventory. Another couple of things to bear in mind are that you'll want to have high tier crafting stations available in your settlement, otherwise you're going to hit a wall when trying to level up your crafting. Also, you don't need to base yourself just out of one area. Ideally, it will be 2 adjoining areas of your own faction. You're far less likely to run out of storage space that way. Also, bear in mind that the markets are actually completely separate for each area. So it makes sense to base yourself somewhere with lots of players and a thriving market. Otherwise, you'll need to move items after you've crafted them to realistically be able to sell them. Tip number 19, it's just a quick one really. It's just to say, when you log off, do it in a settlement or at a campsite, because while you're away from the game, you will gain rested XP. Now, this is going to help you level up faster. When you return to the game, you're going to get a grey portion on your XP bar, and while you're doing quests and you're filling up that grey portion, you're going to get extra XP on top of the normal XP you gain. Now, this could be useful for people that don't have as much time as the average person to play the game. It's going to help you level up faster, but either way, it's going to help everyone in the long run. So make sure when you log off, you are in a settlement or at a campsite. And now we're on to our last tip now, guys. We're on tip 20, which is to just make sure that you faction with your friends. Now, if you don't, you are not going to be able to participate in PvP with your friends. You're going to be playing against them. So unless you want to kill your friends in PvP, please make sure you join the same faction. You're going to wait 120 days, 4 months, because that's how long you have to wait to change your faction once you've selected one. And it's going to cost you 100 days off, which isn't very expensive, but it's more the time wait. So please make sure you all join the same faction initially. And that brings us to the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the tips and that they help save you some time whilst leveling. If you enjoyed the content, please give us that thumbs up on the video. We'd really appreciate that. And also click subscribe if you haven't already. If there's any other time-saving tips that I've left out, please drop us a comment and let us know. Just now to say goodbye from me, Benzo. Thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.